Hello and welcome everyone to Access U TV. My name is Michelle Edhouse and today I have a very special guest joining me on the show. I have the amazing, phenomenal yumminess of Robbie Richardson. She lives here in New Zealand and is our resident Talk to the Entities facilitator. And I'm so excited that she's joining me on the show today because she has shown me a different perspective with regards to depression. And as you know, I have written the book Unlocking Unhappy. And once I got talking to Robbie about how entities can be an effect on people and their happiness. And she's also been doing quite a bit of work with people with regards to suicide prevention and using the tools of Access Consciousness and Talk to the Entities to create a totally different change in that side of things. So welcome, Robbie.
Hilda.
So lucky to have you come play.
Yes.
Yay!
So I'm coming to you from freezing Palmerston North.
Winter's definitely here, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is. Hi, everyone.
So, Robbie, tell me a little bit about you and how you got interested in the topic of Talk to the Entities, because Talk to the Entities is a specialty class with regards to access consciousness. So what was it that got you started in this area?
Well, it was actually right from, I would say from birth. My mum and her side of the family come from Te Whanau and Ngāti Whanaunga, which is up the Eastern Bay of Plenty and Coromandel. And the maternal side of our family is very intuitive, and that part of my being was passed down to me through there. So my mother, I was very fortunate to have my mum, and she helped me as I was coming through growing up. So when I was growing up as a little child, we lived on a big farm, and I would play with the nature spirits, play with the little nature entities in the trees and the grasses and everywhere. And all of my older brothers and sisters have already left for boarding school, but I was at home. So I didn't have anyone to play with because the nearest neighbour was like a couple of k's away. So my mates were so-called imaginary friends. They weren't. They were actually my mates and still are. They're naughty though. They hide stuff all the time. So I used to get in trouble for lots of things being hidden. But other than that, I didn't notice that no one else had these friends until I got to school, high school actually, because my friend down the road from me, she had so-called imaginary friends, and she was a Pākehā lady, a girl, and so I had no point of view or judgments around that I was Māori or that I wasn't, or that she was Pākehā or wasn't. It was just that we had similar play friends. So it wasn't until high school, around the age of 16, that my whole world changed, where there was lots of fear around that space. But it wasn't only nature spirits, it actually started there. But I had a real understanding of that world and loved playing in it. Yeah, it got spooky when I was about 16. Yeah, and that was because I was buying into other people's viewpoints of what was actually happening in that space.
Right. So I've heard a lot of stories about people who, when they get to around about that age, they start to try and shut down their awareness and shut down and hide what they're aware of and make it wrong. Is that part of what can create some of this depression and suicide, or is that something else?
No, that's absolutely right. So actually growing up being Māori also gave me an understanding of in terms of your growing and your growth and your development, around that age is where you become a lot more aware, because you're transitioning to a different stage in life. And so you become a lot more aware, and it becomes intense in your space, which means in your body. So you can pick up on entities and energies in your space that actually show up in your body as pain, as headaches, as not being well. Your head might go all fuzzy, and you're just generally out of sorts. However, if you do the simple clearing, that space clears. Because what I've found is our purpose, my purpose for being here, is to clear, and in Māoridom we call it wātea, or to clear. We do that every day anyway, but I didn't realise the impact of why that tikanga, or why that was that we do that. Now I know, thanks to Shannon O'Hara. But I thought you had to be someone special to do that. Do you know what I mean? Because I was actually brought up Hahi Mihingari, which is Anglican, so I went through the religious side of the clearing stuff, which does work, by the way. There's no doubt about that. It does work. But there were extra things that I could do for me rather than having to go somewhere else to be cleared, so to speak. So one of the things that I'd love to be able to teach in this space is for people to know for themselves how to clear their space, how to communicate with, and then how to receive from that space. And that's all you do in that space. It's those three things. That's all. And so when I realised from Shannon O'Hara, God bless her, she explained that to me, I was thinking, wow, you don't have to be all of these things in that space when you just go through these steps. And you can be such a contribution to what we call the taha wairua, or the spiritual side, or those that have passed on, or other beings, because the entity space is everything. Okay, those that are passed on, and even those that are here, you can be talking about entities in terms of a business. You can be talking to entities in terms of the chair that you're sitting in, or the table that you're at, or the building that you're in. It can also move out in terms of those areas of mythology and legend. So what I found with being Māori is that all of our kōrero tuku iho, or our stories from ancient times were called myths and legends. They're not at all. Those are beings that contributed to us, and if you don't acknowledge that space, yes, it hides from you because you're not accessing it. But it is such a magical space to be in, to be able to acknowledge Maui, to be able to he's naughty too, by the way, to acknowledge, it's amazing how I hang out with the naughty ones, eh? Isn't that great? Yeah, anyway. That's a little bit about me.
So coming to your classes is not going to be any fun at all.
No fun at all at my classes. It's going to be totally serious, heavy dent. Absolutely. No, it won't be. No. Yeah, and so all of the kōrero about all the voyages and engaging like the different elements, such as let me see, I'm trying to do two languages here. So such things as the beings of the sea, tangaroa, or the beings of, they were called gods or demigods, but that was used to kind of negate the power in that beautiful space, I believe. But once you understand how when you commune with Tawhiri Mate, or the wind, and how you can utilise that being to clear. You can utilise tangaroa to clear. You can use your own clearing, but sometimes we go to these other places in order to lift and clear our space so that we don't have all this fuzziness. We don't have all that heavy that is other people's stuff. So 98% of the stuff that we have in our bodies, thoughts, feelings and emotions, points of view, judgments, are actually not ours. And so with the clearings, it clears those spaces that we've actually brought into from entities, from beings, or from this world, those that are walking around with 2 legs or maybe 1 leg or whatever, maybe 3 legs, who knows. No judgment. But we do pick up on those. And I guess that was one thing that I learned at age 16 is why was I becoming so heavy in my shoulders, in my head, still trying to function at school. And I contacted my mum and I said, I'm just feeling really, really awful. And I've been to the doctor and the doctors, they can't find anything, so they said it's viral. Mum got me sent home. Yeah, because she knew what was going on. So she sent me home and I went to see what we call a tohunga, which is a person who is skilled at clearing that space. I mean, there's lots of different types of tohunga, but the one that she took me to was that. And within half an hour, I was fine. Right, that happened to me 4 times in my life. And one of the people that she took me to was a Pākehā couple, beautiful couple, that just lived down the road from us when it happened to me again. And I ended up in hospital with this mystery illness. Couldn't get my head off the pillow. It was deemed as viral again. Or I had something psychological going on. And so they wanted me to be assessed by the mental health team because they thought it was all in my head, right? All in my head. So they asked me to be assessed by the mental health team at the hospital. Mum declined. She said, thank you very much, but no, I'll take you home. Thank you very much. We'll sort this out. So again, that was 4 times that happened. The first time I didn't go to the hospital, but there was another 4 times that I did, right through from probably age 16 through to 30s, about the age 30s, around there, that I did go to the hospital. She took me from there, they were different tohunga every time, and I think it's because the availability of them, rather than I had to go to that one. And within half an hour, I was back to me because I'd cleared my space. The last time I went, I said to myself, this has to stop. I have to learn how to do this for myself, because if this is a gift, which I always knew it was, just hadn't quite seen the sparkles in it at that time. I see the sparkles now. Great. I had children, you see, so I had to know, for me, so that when the children were coming through having these gifts, which I knew that 2 of them out of the 5 were very strong, and the other 3 are too. There's 1 in denial, but that's okay. Yeah, but it's okay. We will get there, but I needed to have in place something for them so they didn't have to go through the medical system, because it just wasn't working. So I was very fortunate that I had this mum that was onto it enough to not take me through a different way. Yeah. And I'm very, very grateful for her for that. Mum passed away in the year 2000. So she helps me out even more now, than she did then. So what we find is that when people pass away, it's like this spooky thing comes over people. And it's like they can no longer commune or be with that person the same. But that's true and it's untrue as well. All that's changed is that they no longer have a body, but their being is still very much present, and they're very much the same. So I've got this really auntie that used to tell us off all the time. Now she still tells us off on that side, you know. It's not changed. Nothing's changed. You know what I mean? But I just know that's auntie.
That's an interesting thing. Like, I've talked to people and I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask the spirits to help me. It's like, well, make sure you find one that's actually A, capable, and B, willing. Because, you know, as you say, you do get naughty ones, but you also, like, you know, they don't, just because they've passed over doesn't mean that they suddenly become all-knowing, all-being, all-seeing, brilliant beams of light. They still be them unless they choose to create a change.
That's right. And the other thing in that space that you've hit on a great point there, you spoke about, you know, when they pass over, it's also that they're a contribution, okay? And that's in the clearing stuff that you learn in the classes that we run. And so to be able to know who's in your space, like beforehand, I just used to be able to sense. I didn't used to be able to see as much, but I'd sense that they were there, or I'd get the information very quickly into my space, like immediately, to know who or what they were, and whether they were actually there for me or not, because that's actually a really important question. You know, okay, so if we were to look at this space in terms of this reality currently, like you're walking into a super mall, right, and there's people everywhere, but you don't necessarily engage with everybody in that super mall, you know, but you might see some people and you acknowledge, and you see some other people and you acknowledge, but the rest of them are just people in that space. When people pass over and they're in your space, it's similar to that. Okay, it may not be a super mall, or it might be, who knows, but it's just understanding that there are entities and beings around you that may be there for you, but they may not be, but you're sensing them. So it's about clearing them to allow them to choose differently from where they currently are, or to communicate with them. And we go to support that, or to receive from. So,
Robbie, one of the things that we've covered already in this Access TV series is the tool of who does this belong to. And what just popped up there for me as you're talking about that whole super mall idea was like, you know, most people are aware that, you know, if they can be aware of a little kid crying, they, you know, a little bit of emotion could come up for themselves. It's like, oh, or oh, I'm feeling really sad, and you turn around and you see somebody that's crying, or you know, that sort of thing. And that also shows up with regards to entities, isn't it? You don't necessarily see someone crying, but you're aware of a sadness. And if you're not using that tool of who does it belong to, it's like, oh, I'm sad. It's like, no, you're not sad, you're just aware of it.
yeah.
So go back.
Potently aware.
If you haven't watched that video, please go and watch that video, because it is it's an amazing tool. And when it comes to being aware of it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody with a body that you're sensing. As you just said, it may be somebody that doesn't have a body that you're sensing. And if you ask that question, who does that belong to, you get to have that awareness of, is it mine or someone else's? And you don't have to make it yours and go, oh, I'm so excited to
Unless you like trauma and drama, you know.
If you want to choose that, that's totally fine. I've found since using that tool, it's just made so much difference in my level of happiness and joy. Yeah. So so you've been working with youth, especially around the suicide prevention. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's been going on there and how what's changes of showing up and stuff like that for people?
Yeah, sure. So actually, here in Palmerston North, we have been with a group of health professionals at Hepuna Hawara, who their actual area that they work with are Māori language speaking areas, or language speaking areas such as kura kaupapa, wharekura, what are they called? Kapahaka groups, kōhanga reo. So it's all the areas where mainstream Māori aren't the best at accessing, right? So that is their space. So we have a number of schools in that area. What we found, because we're quite active with working with a few groups with kapahaka, so the national, they go to the nationals and all that sort of stuff. But what we found working so closely with the kids was that a number of them were very intuitive, whereby they weren't handling things as well. So it actually came through the kapahaka, and so this might have been after my first classes with Shannon, that these kids are actually showing up. And so I had these tools from Shannon O'Hara. Just doing a big plug for her, man, which is amazing. She's like totally saved my life, and that's like for real. But anyway, so I had just been to her, I did her marathon, all the classes, all at once. So I was like just brimming with all these tools. And then the kids would just come across my pathway through the teachers or through the health service. And we start them off just doing bars. Access bars was the first thing that we did with the kids, because through that, from an entity perspective, it clears your entire body and auric bodies and everywhere in terms of giving them their own space and being them, right? So bars is the first thing that we offer and we gift to them to do. We provide that for them, for their for them. And then if the families aren't coping as well, we give the bars there. So after the bars though, and if because generally there's a time period where they're all good, and then you can kind of sense that there's some stuff brewing for them again, whereby, okay, it's time to do bars, and then add in the entity's tools, because these kids already are very potently aware, but they're scared. They're scared of what's kind of happening. Oh, hi. Gilda. How you? What a lovely little being that was. Well, he's quite tall now, isn't he?
One.
Far out. Yeah. So the kids were very fearful, but they were very open to share what was happening in their space, which was great. And so we added, after bars is just so potent in the space. So we do bars, and then we add some tools for them to be able to practice and play with. Play is key here. Okay. Play with for their own space. Okay. So we've come quite a long way since then though, but these kids that were actually, I'm actually downplaying a little bit in terms of their anguish and their anxiety and their depression and their fear, because they were very fearful, to the point of, if I can explain one case where she was absolutely catatonic, so she had checked out completely. But we utilised, she was catatonic. We had the ambulance come in to assess her, and they were going to take her to the mental health unit, and the parent says, no, we're just going to try something else first, and then if that doesn't bring any change, then we will bring her through. So they rang us, my sister and I, and we went in, we did bars, we did the entity clearings, and left the family with how to do that for them. We cleared their house, we cleared the whole family, we cleared their space, we went into a bunch of different other stuff. And within, I would say, 3/4 of an hour, she was back. She was no longer catatonic, she was back. She said, I'm hungry and tired. Those two things are like music to your ears, because they're back being them again. So she was hungry, she was tired, she had a headache, so she just needed to have a McDonald's. We just threw a McDonald's down her, but a Coke. I know it's not the most healthiest thing, but it was what we just needed to add that energy in there. And I mean, at 11:30 at night, that's probably the best thing you can do at that time. And then she rested. So the next day she was back at school. You see what I mean? How quickly these tools, and it does make me quite emotional about it. Sorry.
No, I'm really grateful.
Because the other option, right, is years of medication, years of them not being them, and this just gives them their life back. Yeah. And I do get emotional about it, because Shannon O'Hara gave me my life back. And so my job, once I get my act together a little bit more, is to share those tools that allow us to be us, to allow us to be able to cut through all of the medical terms of depression, of anxiety, of ADHD, of all this stuff, which really all we have to do is clear that stuff and have those tools. And it's so simple. So simple. So whoever, I invite you to come, and I promise I won't cry like this. It's going to be more fun. Promise.
This is exactly what I'm aware of the possibility for all these people, like, and not just kids. There are people out there who have been dealing with this stuff all their lives, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, and to have these and they are simple tools. I mean, they're not rocket science. They're sort of stuff. Some of the tools are like instant, ask a question, change the world, and so yeah, as you say, like, tell us a little bit about the classes that you do, and how people can get these tools.
Yeah, so what we did here is that we ran a program, and what we started with, there were 3 parts to it. The first one was a Rongoa Māori session, which was a 1-dayer, which put you back in communion with all things, basically. And you could learn traditional knowledge around how to utilise the trees and make balm, and just lovely, yummy stuff like that. And knowing who you were talking to in that space. So this was particularly for Māori, but man, some of the stuff in there can be so useful for everybody. The second thing we did was a 1-day access bars class. And what we found is that the kids, because they were coping with what they were coping with, weren't ready to do a class, but their family was. So we pulled their family in and all the children in and did bars classes with them, so that when those that were being at the effect of required the bars being done in that family, they had people that could do that. Not to mention they received all the other wonderful information that they can from that manual and from that class. injected into that family, so therefore you've got this wealth of knowledge across the family, and then they're available, right? Just talking on that though, we had babies all the way through to kaumatua, older people, and the babies, especially from around 12 down to little people, so intuitive. So they did their own bars class. Like, they were ahead of, we had about 20 people in one room, and then we found this group of about 6 in the other room who were already ripping through the two-sided form on how to do it. They were like way ahead. It was just magical, that they just picked up on the energy and did it. And they were so quick and potent, which was great. And what that's installed in our kids is their gift to being, and how us adults should actually be listening to them rather than the other way around, because they've actually nailed it, really.
Yeah.
So, but now they're quite supported. Then the next class that we do is a Talk to the Entities introduction, which is a 2-hour session, and just to introduce them to that space. Yeah, and that particular class, through it, can provide some tools for the families, for the people. So they kind of, for our one here, we put through about 480 people through the program, and we've had probably about 75% of them do the Talk to the Entities intro as well. I think it was. We had some younger ones. Oh no, sorry. Was the bars, and then the ones that did the intro was if they had further assistance in that area. But what we've got now are schools who. One example is that we had at the end of last year, we had a school in our region that had children who were, how they all get together and start talking about suicide and all that sort of stuff, and they just wanted to nip it in the bud before the holidays. And there were 30 children in this particular class. And so on a Friday, we found out that they wanted to access the bars on the lunchtime for the children, and that they would take care of getting approval from the parents. The school was supportive of it, only because we'd done some work there already. And by Monday, we had 30 practitioners turn up for 30 children, and we just did it during lunchtime. We're in there at 12 o'clock. We're out of there by 1:30. Done.
Awesome. How does it get any better than that?
That's right. And we had what the kids liked, the intermediate children, what they liked was that we had kids from other schools. They were in the uniforms. They'd come down at lunchtime doing their bars. And these are just kids doing other people's bars. It was so touching. So it wasn't just old fogies like us there doing it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only professional. It was our own. So it's been a little bit of a contribution in our area. It's been fabulous. But
That's
yeah.
so exciting to hear. Now, you teach the Talk to the Entities intros, and you also have a 2-day class. Tell us a bit about that one.
Okay, so the Talk to the The Talk to the Entities introduction is just that. It is an introduction, but oh my gosh, the places that you can go in that 2 hours is just phenomenal. And that starts you for a 2-day class in, imagine you wanting to know as much stuff as possible within the entity space. I mean, so from, as we say, the nature spirits to like the dragons or the taniwha or mountains or all that sort of stuff that you've always wanted to know becomes a bit more easy. And it's absolutely, the manual is unreal. Like I'm just bursting to get that manual out there to people because it's just amazing. And it'll give you so much more fun in life, taking you out of the oogie boogie spooky and into more knowing. So when I talk about knowing, it's that instant knowing before the thoughts, feelings, and emotions take over. And you have to practice it, eh? Like it's a muscle you have to practice, but we have this intuitive knowing, and the kids do it all the time, particularly if you're listening to how they talk. They've got this instant knowing that we go, oh, how did you find it? Who told you that? That sort of stuff. But they already know. And then 2 seconds later, it's happening. So it's about having, acknowledging that space in your intuit knowing and developing that intuit, because the knowing space, to know that you know, is so powerful for yourself and to teach others. So that's something that I've started to teach my kids, especially the younger ones, because they've got more ears. But and not to make it weird, even though we are weird. I mean, I do embrace my weirdness. I love being weird. But just so that they know to normalise that in our space. So as an example to that knowing, for some reason my daughter was at a park and she must have been having a chat to one of her mates, spirits mates, and what a lady had come up to her and just asked who she was talking to. She looked quite concerned, and what actually came out of that though was Putty came back to me and she said to me, Mum, and she had this look on her face. I said, what? And she says, that lady can't see, or she can't sense other beings. She goes, it really hurt me. She goes, I felt so sad for her. When I was growing up, was sort of like if someone had that judgment about me, I'd be scurrying behind, I'd scurry, and try and shut everything down and. But she was actually like genuinely concerned for this lady that she's missing out, and I love that.
How does it get any better than that? I mean, kids are so aware, and first time I read Shannon O'Hara's book, Talk to the Entities, I had an amazing awareness around our youngest, who was about 4 at the time, and he got terribly car sick.
Yep.
And one of the things that Shannon talks about in her book is where her dad takes her to the Tower of London, and he literally had to pick her up and carry her out of the Tower of London because she was vomiting from the intensity of the awareness of all the entities. Yeah. And I was willing to ask the question, okay, so is this relevant to Damien and his travel sickness? And I got a huge yes. And so we started running a clearing when we were driving, when we were traveling anywhere. Before we left home, we'd run this clearing, and every time we remembered to run the clearing, there was no travel sickness. No. And it's actually now become a space that we be. We don't actually have to physically run that clearing anymore, but it's a space that we be, and he doesn't get travel sick anymore. And it was really interesting because once I had that awareness and I started talking to some of the local Māori about the scenario, and they're like, well, where was he getting sick? And I would tell them, and when they said that, I was like, oh, there's actual spots on the road that hit every time we went through. And it actually turned out that they were major, either major burial grounds or war zones.
Yeah.
There was just obviously such a density. And it's like, just that little thing.
Yeah.
So much ease in our world.
Totally.
Time.
Yeah, I was one of those kids too that got sick.
Yeah, well, I was too, and my sister was the one that had the imaginary friends, and because I never had imaginary friends as such, I always thought that I had no talents with entities, had no awareness of entities. And since I started doing Access Consciousness classes, I actually have started to recognize the awarenesses that I have that actually are awarenesses of entities or awarenesses of communication or whatever that be, that I don't hear voices, I don't see things moving or people or anything like that, but I have an awareness of the energies. And that's something that I'm so grateful for the tools that are taught in the Talk to the Entities classes, because it's created so much more ease and space in my world. Yeah. So you've got classes coming up. I know that you're definitely coming to Rotorua in June, which I'm super excited about.
It's next month, isn't it?
Yes, I know. It's so exciting.
I love Rotorua.
And you're also looking at heading to Christchurch and also to Northland. Am I right with those?
Yeah, Whangarei in November, and I'm yet to hear back from Christchurch, but I'm required down there. So that'll be quite cool to go down there.
Awesome. I'm super excited about the possibilities, as you've described today. It's like what
Oh, and Taranaki as well.
Yay. So what questions can we ask, and what possibilities are available for people when they've got these tools, and how much more ease and joy can they have in their lives? And as you said, with parents coming along whose kids are very aware, the gift that can be, even if the parent doesn't have the awareness, or is not acknowledging it, whatever that is, but just having these tools to facilitate their children to have more ease when the stuff shows up. What gift that can be. That's amazing. It's very cool.
So yes, children are welcome, definitely welcome, with or without their parents. No. I can bring a nanny,
Well, that's one of the cool things about the Access Consciousness classes. Under 16-year-olds are free, and 16 and 17-year-olds are only half price. So, please don't let having kids be a barrier to come into your classes. Bring them, because they are such a contribution, and they get the tools, and they'll remind you of the tools during the day too.
Absolutely, yes. So really important to acknowledge all the beings that do contribute to the work that we're doing with Access and with the Talk to the Entity space, because they are having a party on the other side. They actually can't wait to get there too. So which is really quite cool. So if you are interested in regards to the Talk to the Entities space, come along to the introduction. Just come along, have a listen. Also, there is on the Talk to the Entities website, Shannon O'Hara does do a free Talk to the Entities introduction. So if you look up on the Access Consciousness site, or the Talk to the Entities site, www.talktotheentities.com, there is a free class that she does on that. Have a listen to that, and then you can come along to our one to receive that one as well, so you have a double information, which is great.
Cool.
Such an invitation, that one.
So how can people find you, Robbie? I know you're on Facebook, and so you're also on the accessconsciousness.com website. So if they go there, actually, for those in New Zealand, accessconsciousness.co.nz will take you to all the New Zealand facilitators, and Robbie is on that page too. So
I'm the only Robbie. Did you know that?
Yes, that's quite. Get any better than that?
In the whole world.
In the whole world, so far. So please check out Talk to the Entities. Check out Robbie Richardson. She is amazing, and I'm so looking forward to hosting her here in Rotorua. And if you want specifics on the Rotorua class, you can check out my website, accessu.co.nz/entities, and there'll be both the intro class and the 2-day class. And hey, if the bars is something that you're interested in, there is bars facilitators in 173 countries around the world. How does it get any better than that?
Right.
And I've got a class coming up on the 28th of May, so next weekend.
Right.
Time next weekend, yay! So yeah, check it out, and if it has any read for you at all, please come play at these classes. They're amazing and such a huge gift. Thanks so much for joining me, Robbie.
Welcome.
Awesome. I'm so grateful to have you. And what else is possible if we are willing to choose to be aware of all energies with absolutely no resistance, no judgment, and just willingness to perceive, know, be, and receive everything. Everything. All right. Thanks again for joining us here at Access UTV. What else is possible? Bye.
Bye.